We are joined now on the line by Bret Baier, the anchor of Special Report on Fox News. Hey, Bret, good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, so the House was very busy last night trying to come up with a budget to keep the government running. They passed this omnibus budget bill, 219 to 206, but I think it was a lot closer than a lot of people thought it was going to be.
Yeah, it was touch and go there for a little while, in part because there was a charge to vote against the bill led by not only Nancy Pelosi but Elizabeth Warren in the Senate on the issue of changes to Dodd-Frank. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was really interesting that the reason this bill in the House got across the finish line, by all accounts, is because of the phone calls and whipping by President Obama and Vice President Biden. So for all of the talk about how he doesn't have any juice, I think there is some juice left there, because I think he's largely responsible for getting the bill across the finish line.
Well, at least in the House, it's still got to go through the Senate, right?
Yeah, but I think it has a much clearer road in the Senate as long as Elizabeth Warren doesn't filibuster it.
And, Bret, a lot of grumbling from the Republican base, the grassroots, the Tea Party, whatever you want to call them, about basically what they see as business as usual here in getting this through. And I understand the tough aspect of the lame duck session, but once Mitch McConnell takes the reins in January and Republicans even have a larger majority in the House, they could go back and revisit all of this spending and go back to regular order. Is there any stomach for that?
Well, I do think that Mitch McConnell desperately wants to get back to regular order, and at least John Boehner has talked about that. This was not supposed to happen. These massive 1,600-page bills with, you know, as you call them in Congress, Christmas trees filled with ornaments, and not related to the budget per se. And it did happen, and it was crammed down lawmakers' throats at the very end, up against a deadline, as we've seen many times before. This almost went down in flames, but it looks like it's going to not have a problem.
All right, I want to get your take on this interview you did with Dick Cheney the other day. This is cut 35, Mike. Here's the actual moment where people are really focusing on. When you ask him about that Senate intelligence report, he said,
"The report says it was not successful.
The report's full of crap."
So he, in no uncertain terms, tried to knock this down. Let's talk about that report and all of the discussion that's been had in Washington about it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Vice President Biden clearly came ready to rumble about that report. I mean, Vice President Cheney came ready to rumble about that report, because he was ready to defend it. He was unapologetic. It was really vintage Cheney, classic Cheney, in that he doesn't have any qualms about what was done, how it was done. He goes back to the 3,000 people who were killed on 9/11. And I think there are a lot of people listened to that and found it refreshing, despite the fact that there are obviously many people who challenge the legal basis of what was done.
And by the way, great interview, and it really was riveting television, Bret Baier. But I think that really comes down to this one question, and we saw CIA Director John Brennan responding to this yesterday. Yes, you used these techniques, but did they pay off? Did you get information? The Senate report says no. Brennan said yesterday it's unknowable. Cheney said absolutely we did. This should be something that we should be able to know, isn't it? I mean, why is it so hard to get an answer on that?
No, that's true. I mean, Cheney's far more cut and dry. Brennan, I think, is... well, remember, he's in an administration now, as opposed to the last administration he was in. The administration now, the president authorized and supported... didn't authorize, but supported Feinstein's release of this report.
Yeah.
So he's kind of walking the line there with what he was saying. I think the CIA is saying that they have many different things that came out of these interrogations, whether they came from, that moment, or whether the detainees then opened up afterwards, not to go back to the waterboarding or whatever they were doing. There are stories that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed essentially was teaching classes by the time he got to Guantanamo Bay.
Right, give him the whole organizational chart, and this person answers to that, and that's really good information. Was
that a result of what he went through, or was it a result of the regular order of normal interrogations. We don't know.
Well,
I think that's why it's unknowable.
Yeah, it is unknowable, but I'm really quite surprised that we are having so much discussion about this without having some sense of looking back and realizing where we were at the time these things were happening.
Right.
We're making judgments. We're making judgments about them, 14 years after or 13 years after.
Through the prism of post 9/11, waiting for that next attack. I mean, arguably, we're waiting for that next attack now, and John McCain's point is, as a country, aren't we better than these methods and tactics?
Yeah.
Dick Cheney says, in the heat of the moment, it shouldn't matter.
And by the way, that's interesting because that comparison, are we better than the methods that that ISIS or Al Qaeda is using? That's not the question. The question, which I think your colleague Ed Henry brought up to Josh Earnest, was: were those methods back there to try to extract information from these prisoners who were still alive? By the way, is that better than just randomly and anonymously killing people in the field with a drone? Still don't get an answer from that question.
Yeah. That's right. Well, not only the people, but the collateral damage of whoever's around those people.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think the administration, there's no drone report as of yet.
Right.
Let's have that report. Yeah.
And that's not been released. And I think Jonah Goldberg made an interesting point on the panel. He said, for all these, the conservatives that are hitting that point again and again, he thinks that the drone thing will come up again if there's a Republican president. It'll suddenly be, how can you do this?
Yeah.
I think we as a nation are examining a lot of things that we are doing or have to do. But in the context of preventing terrorist attacks, it takes on a different sense.
I was looking at the Fox News polling that has just come out, and it shows that a lot of people in America are not very pleased with this president right now. 60% oppose his position on immigration. 58% oppose his position and his support for Obamacare. 56% don't think he's doing a very good job when it comes to handling ISIS.
Yeah, and if you look at the ISIS question, 81% believe that ISIS will try to or be successful at attacking on U.S. soil.
Wow.
81%. I mean, that suggests that we're a little jittery about where we are in the war on terror.
It also suggests that we don't have much confidence in his ability to do anything about it.
I think, one of the things that was most telling, I interviewed Saxby Chambliss recently as he's outgoing vice chair of Senate Intel, and he said the thing that keeps him up at night is the lone wolf ISIS recruited inside the U.S. He said we just can't track them, and he says that's the biggest threat.
Exit question, Bret Baier. I know you've grown wary of my exit questions once a week.
No.
Your colleague James Rosen was on Bill O'Reilly this week, and O'Reilly called him a pinhead. Now, be honest. At the Washington Bureau, if that happens, you kind of carry it as a badge of honor, don't you?
Right. It's good to be a pinhead.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, did you notice James tweeted it out?
Oh yeah. He owns it. It's going to be on his tombstone.
I think he just got a T-shirt that says pinhead.
In James Rosen world, there is no bad publicity.
No, that's true. That's true.
All right, Bret, have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks.